like the movie? Did you like the movie? Come on! I like playing those games.
You play them so well. All right, so the first thing I can ask is, where did this come from? What dark recesses of your mind and imagination did Don John come from? Because this is brilliant.
Thanks. Well, I kind of wanted to tell a story about how people sometimes treat each other more like things than like people, and how the media can contribute to that. And I suppose that comes from, you know, a little bit my own personal experience, having grown up working as an actor. And, you know, actors in our culture do get treated sort of like things more than people sometimes. But I don't think it's just actors. I think everybody goes through this. I imagine lots of you have experienced this, where you're talking to somebody and you can tell they're not listening to you. They've already decided what you are. They've put you in a box with a label on it. And where did they learn what label to put on you? Well, maybe from their family, or maybe from their friends, or maybe from that movie that they saw, or that TV that they grew up watching, etc. Or maybe from, you know, some pornography that they watch all the time. And so I thought that a relationship between a young man who watches too much pornography and a young woman who watches too many romantic Hollywood movies would be sort of a funny way at telling a story about that.
Now, coming into this film, the last couple of years, you've had a chance, well, first of all, throughout your career, you've worked with some terrific filmmakers, some terrific storytellers. You've worked with one in particular, Christopher Nolan, on a couple of films that you worked on in Inception, which you were awesome in, by the way. Of course, The Dark Knight Rises, which you were awesome in, by the way. What type of influence did he have specifically, but also the other directors you've worked with in your career? How did they influence you, and how did that, you know, play itself out on the screen?
Yeah, well, I was in the middle of shooting The Dark Knight Rises when I got my first draft finished to this, and first started kind of trying to put together the production. And I told Chris about it, and he was really encouraging. And that alone just meant a lot to me, that he took me seriously and said, you know, wasn't patronizing, wasn't condescending, but started asking me a lot of specific questions about how I was going to do it and why I was going to do what I was going to do. And that's the kind of guy he is he's not one for small talk or euphemism. He gets right to the nitty-gritty. Yeah, so we had a lot of conversations about it, and he was really supportive, and that meant a lot to me. You know, one thing I noticed, actually, something I've thought about, or that I did think about a lot while we were making this movie, was something I noticed about him that he has in common with some of my other favorite filmmakers I've been fortunate enough to work with. Like, well, that year I worked with Rian Johnson, who made Looper, and then Chris, and then yeah, Looper, and then Steven Spielberg made Lincoln. And one thing that all three of those filmmakers had in common was they could find a balance between, on the one hand, having a plan, and then on the other hand, being open to spontaneity. And that's really important when you're making a movie, because all day long people are asking you, okay, so we had this plan, but now something fucked up, so what do we do? Or, we had this plan, but look, I have a new idea, what do you think of this? And you have to decide, because sometimes the new idea is better than the planned idea, but sometimes, you know, you made that plan for a reason, you got to stick to it. And I would watch Chris and Ryan and Steven make those decisions all the time. And if you go too far in either direction, you know, if you only stick to the plan, your movie will end up sort of stale, I think. But if you only listen to new ideas, then your movie might kind of lack a strong voice. And that balance, I think, is what keeps a movie feeling alive and organic and kind of honest. Yeah, so that's something that I noticed about those three guys.
One of the things I loved about the movie is that there's so many moments a lot of us can relate to in our own lives. You know, I think most of us who are men in this audience, we've had that special, emotional, are those tits real conversation with our fathers. I wonder, how many of the moments in the film came from, I had to ask this, how many of the moments in the film actually came from personal experience, like real things that have happened to you in your life, and how much was just kind of, you just came up with it creatively?
Yeah, most of it's just kind of invented. It is. I mean, if anything, I'm probably closer to the Barbara Sugarman character than the John character. Grew up watching, you know, Sleepless in Seattle. I was like, oh, one day I'll meet Meg Ryan. It's what happens. I don't know. But yeah, you know, I think we all have these tendencies to stereotype each other. and to stereotype, guys will stereotype girls, girls will stereotype guys, everyone will stereotype each other. It just happens. We all have that tendency. And I know I have that within me. I imagine you have it within you. We all have it in each other. These characters are the John character and the Barbie character that Scarlett plays are two very extreme examples of people who, are very intent on making themselves fit into those molds, and be the masculine man or be the feminine woman. But I think we all can identify to one degree or another.
Now, a lot of films, not just comedies, whatever, they can stumble out of the gate if they don't have the right on-screen chemistry, the right actors playing the right roles. You and I were talking about this before we came out here, but you absolutely nailed the casting in this. From Julianne Moore, Glenn Headley, Scarlett Johansson, Tony Danza as your dad. I remember jumping up, oh yeah, Joseph Gordon Levitt's directing a new film. That's really cool. I can't wait to see. Tony Danza's his dad? That just struck me as perfect. Talk about the chemistry you guys all shared together working on this film and how that all worked.
Sure. Well, I wrote the part with Scarlett in mind the whole time.
Your dad?
Yeah, I wrote my dad for Scarlett, but then Scarlett was like, well, what about if I play this other guy? Yeah, the whole time I was writing Barbara, I was thinking of how Scarlett would play it, because I've always thought she was a great actor, from Vicky Cristina Barcelona to Lost in Translation to Movie Lovers, nice, and how she hosted SNL, which not everyone does that very well, and she nailed it. Thanks, man. Wow, yeah, that came off. Yeah, I shouldn't say it that way. All right, I'm gonna rephrase that next time. Thanks. Anyway, I've always thought she was a really great actor, and I also thought that she'd be perfect for this part because, Scarlett is a really smart person, a really talented artist, and yet, what do we mostly talk about? Her looks. Why is that? So I thought bringing just her as sort of that cultural icon into this movie would be really appropriate. And I think that's also part of why she was really interested in playing the part. Because having experienced that, I think she was interested in sort of making fun of our culture that reduces women to their looks. And I remember when I first met her, before she had read it, when I actually went to Albuquerque where she was shooting The Avengers, because I wanted to talk to her before she read the script. And I was lucky enough to be able to arrange a meeting, and we had this really long conversation about how TV and movies and all kinds of media, including pornography, portray men and women and love and sex and things like that. And so coming out of that conversation, I think we were both keen to sort of have a few laughs at the expense of our sexist pop culture.
Now, it takes a skilled director, a skilled storyteller, to be able to balance, and this is something else we talked about before, but to strike that balance between comedy, the emotional, the statements you're trying to make, and make that all work and flow. What is it about you, do you think, as a storyteller, as a director, that allowed you to